I would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Chandrashekhar Bharati, Managing Director and one of the founders of ACE Micromatic MIT, which is part of the ACE Micromatic Group. The company's TPM track products help manufacturing companies improve their shop floor productivity and profits. In the last 6 years, TPM track products have won 6 major awards, including Siemens, CMTI PMT, FIE, Economic Times, PC Quest, NASCOM PEM. We request him to come on the stage.
You know, we've had the advantage of listening to industry titans talk about how they're making a difference with the space where we manufacture mobiles that we use, vehicles that we drive, ACs that we use at home, refrigerators that we use at home. So I'm going to talk about the space of CNC machines that make all these different products. Before I do that, can I have a quick show of hands? How many of you deal directly with companies that use CNC machines? How many of your vendors use CNC machines? Okay. So before I do that, see, ACE Micromatic is actually India's leader in manufacture of CNC machines. We have almost a 45% market share, and the other 50% or so is 85 different competitors, both global and domestic. Okay. Yeah, these are some stats and certain vision that we have. Again, on a much more niche, smaller scale than a lot of the industry titans that you're talking about. See, in the group, we have a half a dozen OEMs which make different types of machines or automation products. And we also have half a dozen companies which are the kind of vendors that you talked about, who make the parts or the sub-assemblies that go into larger operations. The impact of what we are doing is really driven by some of these trends that we see. You might have heard of this word nearshoring or not. Essentially, it talks about how earlier people used to be outsourcing, right? Outsource to China, outsource to Vietnam, outsource wherever, and then sell in the markets that it can be sold at. Today, the drive is, again, maybe colleagues at GE can talk more about that. There's a plant that GE has opened in India, which is called the multi-modal facility, where the idea is that they will manufacture in India a variety of products, only 50% of them to be consumed in the domestic market. The other 50% will be exported, and the same line can make a variety of products and not just one product. The same operator is trained to manufacture multiple products. Okay? That's an example of what's happening with nearshoring. Also, what's happening from a capital goods perspective is people are starting to talk about leasing, outsourcing of the capital goods itself. Now, there's a question whether this is going to lead to a service model of capital goods. I mean, it might be a far-fetched idea today, but it's something that people are talking about. Okay? We all are talking about energy, green, and so many things, right? And how many people here are here because you talk about automation? Less labor, more automation, more this, right? I mean, that's the forum here. Right? So that's where industrial IoT is playing a part. Add to that the whole stack of social, mobile, analytics, and cloud has come together where even an operator is demanding things on his smartphone as he does his work. And that's leading to what we see are smarter machines, green machines. Somebody said brilliant machines. I'm not sure about that yet, but certainly smarter machines. Okay? And what's driving that is, see, if you look at high volume production, the trend is single piece flow, where the same thing is made in the most efficient way possible. However, that's not necessarily reality all the time. So you have batch production, where you need to make small quantities of very accurate stuff which gets changed over time. So the dynamics of what drives that is very different. Then the third is, a lot of people are talking about 3D printing or RP, rapid prototyping, where it is still in its infancy for the most part, but things are transforming quite quickly. All these are ultimately being driven by what's happening in the shop floor, which is how do you get more productivity out of what you have. Okay? And that's the space, the niche space that we believe in machines is getting transformed fairly rapidly. Okay? So this is an example of what's happening with machines. Typically, an operator is told to do essentially a few things repetitively. Press this button to start a process. Do this to do something else, and that's it. And that's where the automation is coming in. Robots are replacing people to press those buttons or to load and unload a part. Right? However, what's being lost there is, if you look at it from the perspective of what the operator really needs to be skilled at, what are the kind of information he needs at the machine to do his job faster, better, cheaper? When does he need to do autonomous maintenance? When does he need to change the lubricant or coolant or any of these kind of things which are taken as mundane and repetitive? And that's the kind of interfaces that we are talking about, where the operator is empowered with the information saying, you need to be changing this or doing this in the next few hours or maybe the next shift or a week from now. A lot of people here, I think, talked about predictive analytics. Okay? This is a direct usage of that. Okay? Similarly, you look at empowering the operator to really understand how efficiently they are producing whatever they're supposed to be producing. This is also kind of a derivative of the famous Toyota production system, where the operators really do everything on the shop floor, including the corrections required to make the process better and better. Okay? So a lot of this is empowering the operator at the machine with whatever they need. Okay? Similarly, when someone is operating an industrial equipment or a machinery, there's a lot of diagnostics that is fed out of the machine and back into the machine. So those interfaces that enable the operator to either do something by himself or to escalate it to the right person at the right time is also being driven right at the machine. Okay? So again, if you see what I started to talk about, I'm talking about not the technology of IoT, but really the usage of IoT. Ultimately, we need to eat the fruits. It's not just enough to know this, how to seed it, how to grow it, how to plant it, and right. So I'm talking about how do we eat the fruits. Okay. We talked about this whole green eco footprint. One of the biggest myths is we know the true cost of everything in production, because we are measuring at a very aggregate level what's happening, including, say, energy. Right? But in reality, what we see is that energy is the least studied of input costs, especially in discrete manufacturing, where everybody knows cycle time. That means I need to produce this part in, say, 5 minutes. Yes, if it takes 5 minutes, 2 seconds, all hell breaks loose. But how many people track energy? Right? And what we see is, looking at it from that fine granular perspective provides such great insight that people can actually transform their energy profile. Okay? Different types of productivity metrics right at the machine, derived from what is happening as we speak, real time. This is not, what if, it's not theoretical stuff. It is really what's happening right then and there. Okay? I'd like to share a couple of examples. Again, when somebody eats these fruits, what happens? Right? Hopefully they don't die. It's not a poison fruit. See, there's a company called Super Auto Forge in Chennai. They're about a mid-size 500 crore type company. About $100 million type company. They started a new export plant. Once they ran it to their capacity, they were getting about 7,500, whatever they're doing in 3 shifts. And after doing a lot of these things diligently, looking at some of these outputs, doing the corrections required, they were able to produce 13,000 pieces of the same part in just 2 shifts. And the whole OPEX of the 3rd shift is gone. There's no need for a 3rd shift. Right? This is the kind of latent capacity that we find not being used. And yes, it may not sound very high-tech, but it's a lot of the low-tech stuff that kills productivity on the shop floor. Okay. Another company called, that's fine. There's another company called Talbros in Pune. I mean, a lot of the vehicles that we drive have the shock absorbers, right? This is a company that makes a lot of that as well. So that's why I'm talking about the vehicles we drive. Yeah, they're looking at a roughly 30% rise in productivity. So what we're talking about is a dramatic scaling of productivity by doing things that may admittedly look low tech, but it is really the highest tech that you can find in terms of making money. Okay, please. Go ahead. So what we do is, no matter what kind of industrial machines there might be, whether it's CNC machines or PLC controls, robots, and so on, we acquire data from any of these types, including metrology, quality data, and some manual inputs. We bring that into a harmonized form into the software that does continuous analysis of all the data streams coming in, okay? Which provides connectivity to the different types of external systems. And that's where you're actually increasing the value of the enterprise systems, like an ERP. Without this kind of data, ERP is still largely what if or best case modeling, right? But with this, you start to get true work in progress, true costing, true inputs to planning, and so on. Okay? And then the software provides the outputs required to manage whatever needs to be done. It could be on an hourly basis, it could be on a shift basis, it could be on a daily basis. Okay? And that's where the productivity comes. It's like, someone in an ICU all the time for better health, right? Hopefully we don't want to be in ICU. Please. So what we do, and this is where the IoT part comes, there's a variety of data that we take in from the industrial machines, whether it's production data, process parameters, machine diagnostics, and the first 3 of these are the application of IoT. Sensors and electrical signals and actuators and motors and so on. The other 2 are really data that is anyway required on a regular basis. So we take all of that into a decision engine and provide different types of outputs which can be used right from the operator to the supervisor to a planner to a costing person and so on. Okay? This is the kind of the conceptual map, which then starts to add value at different levels, right from the strategic, where people are talking about deep analytics, deep integration to third-party systems or SAP or whatever, to tactical, where people are actually taking decisions that impact that day's work. And scoreboards, which are driven by not just some live data, but also data that has been rationalized and aggregated and then presented in a particular format. Okay? So that people can actually be aware of where they are with respect to where they need to be. Okay? And that's what we do from a software perspective. Again, I'm not here to promote my product because I know that a lot of you are not customers here. Okay? But this is really IoT for capital goods. Okay? And the scale, the magnitude of the impact is just significant because, like I said, the cars we drive, the two-wheelers that our kids want to ride, the ACs that we use at home, the mobiles that we use, all get impacted by the productivity of these capital goods, CNC machines or machine tools. Okay? Let's go. And there's a whole range of touch points where these things can be impacted. Okay? Right from the online production to traceability. I see some of the exhibitors talking about traceability as well. So, I mean, we're all talking the same space. This is really a very, very detailed implementation of that space for a particular vertical and a niche market. Okay? We talk about the SMAC stack, social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. This is what is being driven by the SMAC. Right from someone's phone, dumb phone, smartphone, whatever phone, to somebody getting an email, to somebody getting an alert, to these feeds going into an ERP, triggering an alert in turn, and so on. Okay? I'd like to stop here and again just ask you, do you think this will impact on a daily basis what we do? And what would you like to see happen for those who are using capital equipment like machines or your vendors are using them? What do you think? And what do you think is the ROI? I'd like to ask someone, if someone puts in, let's say, 100,000 rupees into something like this, what do you think their ROI can be? Percentage or number of months or anything like that? Any ideas? Absolutely. The ROI can be several 100% in the first year, and then it's perpetual. And this is not theoretical. This is what we've actually seen across hundreds of customers. And that is the true power of IoT. It's not about this buzz, that jargon. It is really making an impact where tomorrow's car that you buy, tomorrow's mobile that you buy, you expect it to be much lower cost while providing higher quality. And that's how people are able to do that. Okay? So with that, I'd like to take any questions you might have. Afterwards? Okay, fine. Thank you all of you.